Hi folks, welcome to Outdoors with Bud. I'm your host, Bud Fields. Okay, this segment I'm going to be talking to you about what is commonly referred to as crankbaits. Many people say these are idiot baits. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, they're supposed to be so easy to catch fish on. And number two, I guess I'm the main idiot that buys them. But the thing about a crankbait and any artificial lure, it takes some dexterity, skill, and know-how. You're taking something that's normally made out of plastic, made out of different types of wood, and you got to try to use your equipment, your rod and your skill to make it look like it's alive. When you throw it out there, you got to make it look like it's a Big Mac from McDonald's and that bass wants to eat it. And I've always done well fishing with crankbaits, but there's certain things you got to be quite aware of. For instance, the crankbait that I'm showing you here, this is what they call a Bands 30 Plus. This is a deep diving crankbait. Most of the crankbaits, as you will see, are shaped just like a fish, and they will be different colors. And some of them are wide, some of them are thin. Well, the shape of the body has a lot to do with the action. The thinner the body, such as, let me see here. The width of that one compared to this one. If you throw this one in the water, this will have a faster side by side, but it'll be a shorter distance that it's going to travel side to side. This one is going to have a wider wobble, which is going to create a lot of focus material for the bass. Now you see the nose on the front of that. When you tie your line onto this little clip right here, when you cast that out there, most of these lures will float on the surface. You put your rod tip down and you start turning your reel crank, and then the water will come over this bill. The wider and longer the bill is, the deeper it goes and the faster it goes. Some of these, if you want to just throw them out there, I've got a few that when they hit the water, they do float. A couple of them will actually sink. But the wider the bill on it and the longer the bill, the deeper it goes. Like if you're fishing on a reservoir and you're fishing a creek channel, sometimes you might need to throw a 20 to 30 foot crankbait. But be aware, it is tiring because that crankbait has to get down deep and you're going to have to use a lot of arm muscle and everything to get it down there. Now I'm going to show you a few of them here and show you different patterns. Now you notice this is quite a bit smaller in body profile. It's got a shorter bill. This particular crankbait will run anywhere from about 6, maybe 8 foot, dependent on your line weight. And if you notice the coloration, the pattern, this looks nothing like a crankbait, but the pattern design resembles that of a as a crawdad. And if you're fishing around rocks, a reservoir or lake that's got a rocky point or something like that, a lot of crawdads like to stay inside of the crevices in them rocks. You throw a crawdad crankbait up there, you're going to catch some fish. Another thing, I'm going to pick this bigger one up to show you a little bit easier. Most of them is going to have 2 treble hooks. A treble hook has one shank that comes down, but it's got 3 different barbs and points. And when the fish hit that, a lot of times they will hit it at the back. Sometimes they come in from the side and hit it. And I've actually caught some fish that whole lure is down inside of the fish. Then you have to use a hook out to get it loose. But crankbaits are a lot of fun to use. Another thing about a crankbait is they advertise them as being sharp enough right out of the box. Very rarely are the hooks sharp enough when you first get them that you're going to catch a fish on it. And if you're looking around and you see any rust or build up on your hook, just take a little file and kind of clean that up a little bit and sharpen it. One of the best ways to find out if a hook is sharp or not, and I think I might have covered this on one of the other segments, is when you take the hook point and you put it on your thumbnail. Just slight pressure. A sharp hook will dig into your thumbnail. Now you don't want to force it down because you can hurt yourself, but just put it on there enough. Just if it's sharp, it'll just kind of dig in and you don't have to worry about it. But if it slides, I'm going to change the angle here to show you. If it slides like this across your nail real easy, you need to resharpen it. Now you notice this is a different color too. Now here's another one. This is in what they refer to as a Tennessee shad pattern. It's got a black back, gray sides, and it's got like a red or an orange bottom on it, which is supposed to symbolize like maybe that's an injured minnow. But most of your crankbait patterns you can get, like here's one in a blue. I've caught a lot of fish on this one in pretty clear water. Here's another one that's a Tennessee shad. Now this is a little stubbier and a wider one. Now this will go again 6 or 8 foot. Then you can go down to a lot smaller one. I've actually caught crappie on this one here. Now this one right here will only run maybe 2 to 3 foot deep. So if you're fishing close to a seawall or around shallow water, a lot of times this would be one of your best bets. Now here's another one of my favorites. This is extremely good, and I've caught fish in this in muddy water, stained water, and clear water because the fish see it. Now this is one, again, very, very narrow, which means it's going to come through the water a lot quicker. It's going to be kicking just like that. And a lot of times a minnow, it's not very big. When it takes off, man, it's really getting out of there. Now this has got some like metal flake paint on it. Now once again, a lot of times a lure caller, that's just like if you see this one, you think, boy, I can see that. I know a fish can. Don't forget that water clarity will have a different effect. This lure right here, like starting out right here, if you're looking at that in 2 or 3 foot of water, it will look just like what I'm showing you now. But if when you get down in the thermocline a little bit deeper in the water, that might even look like a blue, maybe an 8 or 10 foot of water. Now they've got some of them just like this one. I'm going to try to hold these hooks together. This is actually got rattles in it. I hope you can hear that. Now this is one of the lures that when you cast it out there, the instant this particular lure, this is a cotton cordell lure, once it hits the water, it's going to sink. So you're going to have to count that down approximately 1 foot per second. If you're fishing in 20 foot of water, if you want to fish it at 10 foot, you cast it out there and count to 10, then you start reeling. And as it's coming through the water, that lure is going to be waving to you just like this. And those rattles are going to attract a lot of fish. This is a very, very effective lure to use in stained and muddy water. But it will catch fish in clear water also. Thing about a crankbait is, you don't just simply cast them out there and reel them in. You can catch fish on that. But there's going to be times due to water temperature, due to fishing pressure, barometric pressure, and a whole bunch of different considerations that if you just throw that lure out there and crank it back in, it might not affect that bass. Throw that out there and change your cadence. What do I mean by that? When you throw that out there, maybe give it 2 or 3 quick turns and stop it. Turn your reel handle 2 or 3 more times and stop it. A lot of times that little delay will have an effect on it. Now this particular crankbait is what they refer to as a spinning crankbait. Now, a lot of times your hooks will rattle against each other, which will create it. But you notice this has got a very short lip and it's very slim. But when you're working it, once again, that thin profile will make it work faster. But you can crank this down and stop it. A lot of the lures, when you stop moving it, retrieving it, it will either sink to the bottom or some of them will actually float back up. When you're cranking this down and you stop it, wherever you stop that lure, it will not go up and it will not go down. It will stay in that place. Now that's really good early in the spring when the water temperature is still cool. You throw that out there and you crank it down 2 or 3 times and stop it. That will come through the water and stop. And maybe the fish was coming up there and he was just looking at it. But once you stop it and start it up again, that's going to entice that fish to hit that. But crankbait fishing can be very, very beneficial. A lot of times when the water is cool, the strike zone, which is the amount of distance that the fish will travel to hit a lure, when it's real cold, they're not very active. You're going to have to bring that right by them. And you can fish these around stumps and everything. And you're going to get caught. You're going to get hung up. You're going to be losing lures. But like some of your big TV fishermen say, if you're not losing lures, you're not fishing where the fish are because the fish like to relate to structure. But get you some crankbaits, different sizes. I would say buy you some of your shallow runners to maybe 8 to 10 foot. Unless you're fishing reservoirs with a lot of deep water and creek channels, something like this you don't use very often. But there are times when the fish are suspended or they're down in 20 to 30 foot of water. You're going to need something deep like that. Crankbaits catch a lot of fish on them. A lot of guys don't like them, but the main important thing is keep those hooks straight and keep them sharp. And I think you're going to do well on the water.